Hey everyone, how's it going? Thanks so much for tuning in. I know it goes without saying, but this video has been a long time coming. The final in-depth review of my 240SX RESTOMOD build. I bought this car back in 2016. I just can't wrap my head around how it's been 9 years. That's absolutely wild. Where has the time gone? And while I haven't been working on the 240 the entirety of the 9 years, it's still just mind-boggling to me. You know, truth be told, and I'll talk about this more in the review, but when I first bought this car and decided to dive into the project series, I bit off way more than I could chew. I did not know what I was doing. So that's partially why this project took so long, is I just kind of had to learn my way through it. I met people along the way that could teach me this and that, or make me a custom part, and a lot of the times when I wasn't working on this car, I was working on another project that taught me valuable lessons that I could then apply to this car. This thing got so complicated to the point that I didn't want it to be my learning car. Obviously everybody makes mistakes, and I made a ton of them that I went back and fixed and upgraded and, you know, blah blah blah, project car life. But I mean, this car was an absolute labor of love. It's been a part of the channel for so long. It's just it's a part of me at this point. It's a 1989 and so am I. Sort of the same age. But anyway, this video I'm going to be covering all of the ins and outs. We're going to take it way back and talk about, you know, where I started, where I wanted to go, where I ended up going, and of course I'm going to take it for a thorough drive. I'm going to get a bunch of sound clips and driving clips. You know, this car is very, very special to me. I built it with the idea of paying homage to the late 90s, early 2000s tuner scene, you know, the quote-unquote Fast and the Furious era. A lot of parts that went into this car are genuine Nissan stuff, like it's got a Skyline motor, 350Z transmission, Sylvia rear end, a bunch of other aftermarket parts, custom parts. I mean, this thing is absolutely wild. And as you'll see, I've actually cloned it to look like a Nissan 180SX Type X, which we never got in the States, just the 240. And of course there's custom body stuff as well. Anyway, I'm really excited. I'm sorry for being so long-winded. Of course, there's a whole lot of stuff to cover, so without further ado, let's go ahead and start her up and let her run. If you know me and my channel, then you should have known this video would be long, but how else can you properly wrap up an off and on again build that spanned 9 years? I make in-depth reviews that dive into the nitty-gritty of all of the vehicles I get a chance to drive. It's been my life for over 15 years now. There has been so much that's gone into this build that I will undoubtedly miss something, but I'll try my best to cover this car in as much detail as possible. Way back when I finished our 1962 GMC RESTOMOD project, I said that it was the most proud I had been about a completed project up to that point. That is no longer the case. The 240SX is on another level. It's a personal victory. Enough said, let's get into it. The first generation 240SX, or S13, arrived in 1989 as a completely new model, replacing the S12 200SX. It remained in production through 1994 until the S14, the second generation, took over in 1995. When I was hunting for a project car, I weighed a lot of options, but the decision wasn't about being unique, it was nostalgia. The moment I saw this car in person, a wave of memories hit me. It was owned by the same family since new, and when I bought it, it was a 27-year-old car that was already technically classified as a classic. Beyond that, it was just plain fun to drive and instantly brought back memories of drifting and racing 240SXs in the old Need for Speed games. The 240SX emerged during an era where affordable sports cars were booming, competing with vehicles like the Honda Prelude, Mitsubishi Eclipse, and the Ford Probe. Globally, it carried different names. In Japan, the Silvia was available only as a coupe, while the 180SX was a fastback. Mechanically, they shared most underpinnings, but the 240SX stood out in our market because it never offered a turbocharged engine like its Japanese cousins. These cars came in rear-wheel drive with a low curb weight and near-perfect weight distribution. At launch, the 240SX came in two body styles, coupe and fastback, with a convertible added in 1992. Its styling leaned heavily on the 180SX, while the Silvia sported a unique front fascia with fixed headlamps instead of pop-ups that we never got in the States. Personally, the fastback has always been my favorite. Its blacked out A and B pillars make the glass appear to wrap seamlessly around the passenger compartment, while the roof, painted to match the body, added some contrast. The sharp nose and short rear give it a faint resemblance to a late 80s 300ZX. My car came with an original MSRP of $13,499. Options included the Sport Package and the Power Convenience Group, which totaled $2,100. It included both styling upgrades, alloy wheels, and a bunch of interior and convenience upgrades. The only other option was the flip-up removable glass sunroof, which brought the total MSRP with $260 for destination to $16,309. From the beginning, I knew I wanted to build an OEM Plus RESTOMOD, one that would honor the late 90s, early 2000s tuner culture, the so-called Fast and Furious era. My goal was simple. Someone should look at the car and say, wow, that's a nice 240SX, but then keep looking and realize it's so much more than that. The more you notice, the more it becomes a, wow, that's really cool kind of car. I've always admired the iconic 180SX Type X, introduced in Japan in the mid-1990s. While the second-generation Silvia adopted an all-new body style shared with the S14 240SX, the 180SX continued with its original fastback design, but with enhancements, including naturally aspirated and turbocharged SR20 engines. As a longtime fan of Skylines, though, I set out on doing an RB swap, a silky smooth turbocharged inline six-cylinder. There were three trims of the 180SX at that time. You had Type S, Type R, and Type X. I set out to pay cosmetic tribute to the Type X, and what followed was a 3-year journey tracking down every possible OEM Nissan part, some new old stock, some used, to assemble all of the unique body elements. The Type X offered a host of unique pieces. A front bumper requiring a full set of different brackets, braces, and fasteners, front fender extensions, unique side markers, 2-piece side skirts, a large rear wing, and a 4-piece taillight set. Optionally, you can add a 3-piece rear valance set for a more aggressive rear, as well as an extended front valance, all of which I sourced. The front valance especially is really rare. I also installed genuine Skyline front bumper vents for maximum airflow to the intercooler and AC condenser. I also hollowed out the area behind the license plate to bring in all of the cooling on a hot day, which is completely hidden by my decorative front plate and frame. Fitting all of this hardware required removing the factory crash bar. I replaced it with a Street Faction Engineering dash bar with additional reinforcements, which provided the clearance I needed. The only non-Nissan exterior parts are a Cebon DV2 style carbon fiber hood and metal wheel arch extensions from ulterior motives. The rear extensions are an inch wider on either side, which required GK Tech hub-centric spacers. Initially, I was uncertain about the wider rear flares, but they ultimately gave the car a more aggressive stance and a wider rear track width. For paint, there was no alternative to the original TH1 Midnight Blue Pearl. This rare color paired with the blue interior has always felt special to me. I love color-accented interiors. My friend Andy and I stripped the car down for a complete glass-out repaint. We were super thankful to have the support of Transtar Auto Body and Klingspor abrasives during the process. When it came to reassembly, we replaced all of the weather stripping with genuine Nissan parts, trim pieces, and gaskets. The only exceptions being the rear quarter glass seals, which are only available bundled with the glass, which are now discontinued by Nissan. Additionally, the rear glass reveal molding is no longer produced and had to be imported directly from Japan, a lucky but expensive find. We also added custom touches, including an all-black roof and a precise custom painted theme on the carbon fiber hood that accentuates the material while tying it into the car's overall look. With the A-pillars blacked out and wraparound glass, painting the roof modernized the aesthetic, and I'm extremely proud of the result. Other custom bodywork included deleting the factory aerial antenna, trunk wiper, and roof washer squirter for a cleaner appearance. Aero catch locking hood latches secure the front of the hood, while I retained the factory latch with a modified lower tension spring to safely provide dual-level security. I also sourced a new windshield and genuine 180SX quarter glass, though much of the remaining glass is original given the rarity of replacements. I've replaced many other parts with OEM or new old stock items, including 180SX side mirror glass, hood washer nozzles, rear license plate lamp assembly, front and rear emblems, and even an original RPS13 Nissan accessory applique for the taillights. Period correct details I had to include. After the paint cured, my friends at Expel helped coordinate a complex protection package installed by IR Auto Solutions. The car received full Expel Ultimate Plus PPF across the front end, down the rocker panels, and even parts of the rear valence, topped with Fusion Plus 4-year ceramic coating. Inside, we installed Expel Prime XR Plus window tint, 50% on the windshield and 20% on the rear windows, protecting the interior from UV while keeping it cooler during summer drives. This build was never just about making a nice 240SX. It was about creating a tribute to an era, blending nostalgia, period-correct details, and modern refinement into a cohesive, jaw-dropping whole. Every detail, every panel, every choice was considered to make the car more than just a classic. It's a rolling homage to the golden era of Japanese tuners. One of my favorite details of the exterior is the lighting. First off, all of the factory lights have been upgraded to LEDs, so has the interior. But I took it one step further. I upgraded the original halogen headlamps with Oracle sealed beam LED headlights with halos that have a sleek, contemporary look, with a little added flair. And for a subtle nod to classic tuner style, I installed an Oracle color shift LED underglow system that runs all around the car. I even crafted some aluminum brackets to securely mount the front and rear lighting. The side lights just attached to the rocker panels. Complementing the outside is an Oracle Color Shift LED interior footwell kit. Both interior and exterior lighting are controlled via an Oracle BC1 Color Shift controller and smartphone app, while the master switch is a rare new old stock Nissan fog light switch that I installed in place of the original cruise control buttons on the dash, keeping a factory-inspired look. No one would ever notice if I didn't tell them or press the button. I ended up going with Volk Racing TE37 SL one-piece forged aluminum wheels. They measure 17 by 9 inches and have a +12 offset. They're finished in pressed graphite with machine lips. The SLs shave an additional 400 grams of weight when compared to the standard TE37. These wheels in particular are special ordered to have gray and black stickers and black valve stems. Standard, the stickers and valve stems would have been red. The SLs did not come with center caps either in the name of weight savings. I ended up ordering center caps with a special machined adapter as I thought it finished things off nicer. The wheels are currently wrapped in 245/45 Pirelli P0 Narrow GT all-season performance tires, which offer great grip for street use and no noticeable road noise. I've tossed around the idea of getting stickier summer tires, but so far I really haven't had a reason to. I also plan on driving this when it gets colder out, so I'll be sticking with these for now. For brakes, I went big. Rather than picking an off-the-shelf option, I found a company that was offering custom front and rear big brake kits that utilize Willwood components. All except for the rear caliper bracket, which was a custom machine part. The front discs measure 13.06 by 1.25 inches, while the rear discs measure 12.19 by 0.81 inches. All of the discs are internally ventilated and slotted for better cooling. The Willwood 6-piston forged narrow super light radial mount front calipers offer a huge amount of bite that effortlessly scrubs off speed. The rear caliper is simpler, a single piston unit with an integrated parking brake so that I was able to retain the car's original mechanical style parking brake. A common issue with doing an RB swap on these cars is maintaining a proper amount of distance between the brake booster and master cylinder and the turbo downpipe when doing a top mount turbo setup. I ended up eliminating the issue altogether with a single piston Chase Bay's brake booster delete kit, which included an adjustable proportioning valve so I can dial in the brake bias just right. It also has a clutch feed adapter so the clutch and brakes share a common fluid reservoir, a clean and efficient design. Having driven these brakes with power assistance and without, I can honestly say I prefer them not being powered. I absolutely love how they feel. It's a tight, firm feel that's extremely consistent and not overly sensitive. Of course, it takes more effort on the top end than a powered setup, but it's not bad. It's a more linear and connected feeling setup. For a cleaner look, I also went with the Chase Bay's tucked brake line relocation kit, which got rid of the exposed factory hard lines on the firewall in favor of flexible lines that run down and over the front crossmember underneath the engine. All of the calipers are fed by stainless braided lines. Originally, the 240SX was fitted with a fully independent suspension that consisted of McPherson struts in the front and a multi-link rear setup. There's not one part of the suspension that hasn't been changed. In fact, the only Nissan parts still in it are the front and rear lower control arms, which have new ball joints and upgraded polyurethane bushings. The original struts have been swapped out for BC Racing BR Series coilovers, which feature 30 levels of manual damping adjustment. They're awesome. I have the damping set right in the middle, and it's a surprisingly good balance of ride quality. It's firm but never harsh. I actually believe this car rides a whole lot better than the new Nissan Z Nismo I reviewed a while back. All of the other suspension components are from SPL parts. They're all lightweight aluminum parts with full adjustability, black anodizing, chromoly double adjusters, titanium hardware, and unique rod ends with bushings that feature FK Racing bearings. They feature a self-cleaning and lubricating Teflon liner for long life and maximum performance. Highly precise CNC machined billet aluminum bearing shells provide an accurate fit. The upgraded components include the front tension rods, rear upper camber arms, rear traction arms, and rear toe arms. The rear knuckles have also been upgraded with low friction articulating spherical bearings, which eliminates bushing flex and reduces the chance of binding and friction. Compared to the factory rubber-style bushings, the spherical bearings throughout the suspension maintain optimum suspension geometry under load to improve handling and overall feedback. I also added an eccentric bolt lockout kit out back so the alignment can be done solely via the suspension links with no chance in slip and spirited driving. Like the lower control arms, any other remaining bushings were replaced with polyurethane bushings, including the rear subframe, sway bars, and sway bar end links. As far as steering, it's more or less factory 240SX, just upgraded a bit to coalesce with everything else I did. I replaced the original rack and pinion with a new one, installed a new old stock RB25 power steering pump, upgraded to polyurethane rack bushings, and added SPL V5 bump steer adjustable outer tie rods. They allow the tie rod end pivot point to be relocated, which serves to correct bump steer that can result from lowering, modified caster, or lower arm geometry. They do require thicker inner tie rods, so I swapped in a set from a 350Z, a perfect fit. One of the neatest features, I think, are the provisions to mount optional air deflectors on the front tension rods. They help shuffle air directly on the front brake rotors to help cool them down and help reduce the chance of fade on a track. A couple of additional suspension and chassis mods I added was a Nismo front power brace, which ties the tension rod brackets together for a stiffer setup, and a front strut tower brace. The steering is tight and very communicative. Of course, it's still power assisted, although now with the RB25's power steering pump and a Chase Bays line set with a remote fluid reservoir that I mounted to the core support. I kept the original leather-wrapped steering wheel and had it refurbished a while back, although it could stand to be touched up again. Being that the car no longer has cruise control, a friend of mine 3D printed a blank piece to go in place of the original steering wheel buttons. I removed the cruise control button stack on the dash as well and replaced it with the OEM fog light switch that now serves as the master power switch for my LED interior and exterior accent lighting. The steering wheel is manually adjustable for tilt only and is a great size. I absolutely love how simple the forward view is. Any other buttons on the dash that no longer had a function, such as the rear wiper washer buttons and illumination switch, were replaced with a blank and a little OEM spare change holder for a clean, factory-like look. I couldn't stand the idea of having buttons that didn't work. It's the little details that make the biggest difference. While I love a nice set of analog gauges as much as the next enthusiast, upgrading to the Haltech IC7 digital dash was a no-brainer as it communicates directly with my Haltech Elite 2000 ECU. It's also fully programmable with a myriad of displays and information options. You can calibrate custom warnings, colors, layouts, and so much more. You can even have fun with it. For example, I set it to provide a false warning when I hit 6,500 RPM, even though the engine can wind out way past that, to bring up danger to manifold, a little Fast and Furious nod. The IC7 is mounted in a custom 3D printed and painted bezel exactly like the original cluster would have been. There are two USB ports underneath the driver's side of the dash to the left of the center stack. The left USB port can be connected to a computer to use Haltech's NSP software to access the instrument cluster for updates and/or customizations. The right USB port can be connected to a computer so that you can access the ECU for tuning and additional calibrations. Originally, this car was powered by Nissan's KA24E single overhead cam 2.4-liter four-cylinder, which developed 140 horsepower at 5,600 RPM and 152 pound-feet of torque at 4,400 RPM. This car was also fitted with the standard 5-speed manual transmission, but a 4-speed automatic was available. When I first started coming up with a plan for this project, I knew I wanted to do some sort of motor swap, but in keeping with the OEM Plus vibe. I wanted the new engine to still be within the Nissan family. I found a decent deal on an RB25 DET and went down the rabbit hole from there. Originally, this 2.5-liter turbocharged inline 6-cylinder produced 247 horsepower at 6,400 RPM and 217 pound-feet of torque at 4,800 RPM. I bought it with the intention of having it gone through from the start. It was completely rebuilt and transformed by MassWorks Racing Engines in Sanford, Florida, who left no stone unturned. The block was stripped down, hot tanked, sandblasted, and painted before being bored 20 over and torque plate honed to keep cylinder geometry spot on. All of the oil passages were drilled and tapped for fresh plugs, new freeze plugs went in, and the deck was resurfaced to ensure a perfect seal. Inside, CP Carrillo pistons with 8.5-to-1 compression were installed, paired with Manley H-beam rods, ACL race rod and main bearings, and ARP main studs, all wrapped around a polished and dynamically balanced crankshaft with a Nitto collar to eliminate one of the weak points these engines are known for. To keep things reliable at high RPM, we used a Nissan N1 oil pump, an N1 water pump, and a custom ATI super damper, then sealed the freshly rebuilt cylinder head with an MLS Tomei head gasket and ARP head studs. The head itself was hot tanked, vacuum checked, resurfaced, and completely rebuilt. In a perfect world, with an unlimited budget, I would have loved to further build the head and upgrade the cams, but ended up sticking with a stockish setup. I later added Franklin Engineering oil drains to fix the issue RBs are known for with having oil pooling up top when running a high volume pump. The drains use larger AN fittings and lines, including a custom one that runs off the back of the head straight into the oil pan. On top of that, I installed a Mines triple flow cam cover baffle kit to reduce the chance of blow-by at high RPM. Since the baffle kit only works with RB26 valve covers, I upgraded to those, refinished them with fresh red powder coating, new gaskets, hardware, and even a new Valley emblem. I ended up having the cold side of the turbo and the Greddy intake manifold powder coated to match. The red was just something that I wanted to do. I thought it would be a pretty cool accent. The front cover of the RB cover set was modified to work with the RB25's variable cam gear. I also installed a True Focus Fabrication tucked oil catch can that also features a fluid level gauge. It sits nicely between the passenger shock tower and wiper motor. For airflow and boost, I wanted a setup that was both responsive and reliable. The intake side uses a genuine Greddy manifold with a Hypertune 90mm billet throttle body, while the exhaust side runs through a Garrett GTX 3071R Gen 2 turbo mounted on a Dock Race equal-length exhaust manifold. The hot side of the turbo, exhaust manifold, dump tube, and downpipe have all been coated in Jet Hot's high-temp 2K coating to lessen heat transfer. I further added titanium heat insulation to drop temperatures even more to ensure the air conditioning system works as effectively as possible and protect other components from excessive heat exposure, such as the brake fluid reservoir. Boost control is handled by a Tile MVR 44mm external wastegate paired with a Haltech boost solenoid, and a Tile Q 50mm blow-off valve manages pressure release on the intake side. I had a custom stainless steel intake pipe set made along with a full 3-inch stainless exhaust system that includes a resonator and custom blast pipes out back. On the fueling side, the car runs Injector Dynamics 1050X injectors mounted in a Radium Engineering top feed rail controlled by an aeromotive regulator with an AEM sensor. To make it more versatile, I added a GM flex fuel sensor so I can switch seamlessly between 93 octane, E85, or any mix in between without worrying about tuning headaches. Out back, I installed a new OEM fuel tank and fuel sending unit along with a high-flow fuel pump to support the needs of the flexible fuel system. The fuel sending unit ended up having to be modified slightly so that I could get an accurate readout on my IC7 digital dashboard. The fuel tank capacity is about 16 gallons. Electronics were upgraded too. I went with Platinum Racing Products for an LS1 alternator conversion and their R35 GTR coil pack system, which really modernizes ignition performance. Every OEM Nissan sensor was replaced with new ones just for peace of mind. On top of that, the car runs a Haltech wideband controller, an air intake temp sensor, and their boost solenoid, so everything integrates cleanly with the ECU. I also relocated my Optima red top battery to the trunk with a special bracket from ICT Billet, which not only tidies up the bay, but helps with weight balance a bit. Getting the RB25 to sit properly in the chassis meant using a Psycho motor mount kit along with an OEM R33 Skyline front crossmember and engine cradle, which gave me the right fit and geometry. The engine actually sits further down and rearward compared to some other swap kits on the market. For wiring, I used a full Wiring Specialties RB25 to S13 Pro harness, which made the swap feel factory clean. I even tucked the factory front harness so the engine bay looks much tidier, something I really wanted since the rest of the build is so detail-oriented. When it came time to tune, Brad Hackworth at Swap Shop Garage dialed it in. On E85, the car put down 455 horsepower at the wheels at 7,400 RPM. And 351 pound-feet of torque at 4,300 RPM while running 23.3 pounds of boost. On pump 93, it still makes a healthy 405 wheel horsepower at 7,300 RPM and 319 pound-feet of torque at 5,700 RPM. For me, that balance is exactly what I was after. Safe and reliable on pump gas, but with the ability to really stretch its legs on ethanol. The bottom end can withstand more than that, but pushing it further would have required a larger turbo and further attention paid to the cylinder head. Every part of this build, from the hardware and sensors to the turbo setup and fuel system, was chosen with both performance and reliability in mind. The end result is an RB25 that not only makes big power, but does it with the kind of precision and confidence that lets me enjoy it without constantly worrying about what's going to break next. As far as cooling, I went with a Chase Bay's tucked aluminum radiator which sits underneath the core support paired with two 12-inch electric fans. The radiator is quite large and takes up a lot of space. It requires some modifications of the lower core support so that it'll tuck in fully. Because of where it sits, there's no room for a factory air conditioning condenser, and the motors for the pop-up headlamps had to be relocated. I found a custom kit for the latter, which made that easy because let's face it, who doesn't like pop-up headlights? The car also has fully functional air conditioning. It's a hybrid of S13, RB, and universal parts that work in harmony as if it were all factory. I'll dive into the setup more when we get to the interior. Rather than use the original 5-speed transmission that came with this engine, I upgraded to a new Nissan CD009 6-speed transmission. Early on in the build, when I was test fitting this engine with its original 5-speed, I was able to shoehorn it in all right, but with the added length and overall size of the new transmission, the angle I would have had to pitch the powertrain to get it in was not something I wanted to try and attempt for safety reasons. It was very sketchy. I made the difficult decision to make the middle of the core support removable so that it would make the task far safer and simpler if it ever needed to be done again. I built a reinforced network of braces that, in my opinion, made the core support even stronger than it was with everything all buttoned down. I also had to slightly cut back the pinch weld on the firewall too. Another option for powertrain removal could be dropping the subframe and lifting the body up, but that seemed like opening a whole nother can of worms entirely. By removing the center of the core support, the powertrain can more or less be pulled forward and out without messing with the suspension and chassis bits. To clean things up aesthetically, I had a 3-piece radiator cooling panel that I welded into one and made end caps to cover the seams and bolted portions of the core support. It looks nice and supposedly improves airflow to the radiator. Not only was installing the powertrain a bear, but fitting the transmission to the engine was no small task either, requiring a custom adapter kit from Collins Adapters. It included an adapter plate, an extended clutch release bearing adapter, a transmission crossmember, transmission mount, and a one-piece aluminum drive shaft. Due to the motor mount kit I installed, the drive shaft actually ended up being too long as it was based on a different motor mount setup. I had a local shop shorten and rebalance it. The biggest headache with the adapter kit was that it required custom milling of the bell housing down 14 millimeters so that the adapter plate can be sandwiched between the engine and transmission. The machine work alone was quite expensive. The transmission uses an external slave cylinder and a shorter pivot ball from a 2006 and newer CD009. What's nice is that this setup is able to be used with an original style RB starter. The bell housing just needed to be clearanced for it to fully seat. Because the CD009 is significantly longer than the RB's 5-speed, I had to get creative when it came to shifter placement. I wanted as natural of a shifting pattern as possible, and I didn't want to modify the center console in any way. I wanted someone to be able to look inside the car and have no idea what lies underneath. To do that, I added a GK Tech shifter relocation kit, which brought the positioning forward a good bit, but it still wasn't quite enough. The relocation kit also included a reverse lockout, which is nice. Therefore, with some careful tweaking of the shift rod with a torch, I was able to reshape it exactly where I needed it to be so there's no chance of it hitting the console, and the shift boot was able to be reinstalled without issue. I ended up going overkill on the clutch kit, but I guess that's the theme of this car at this point. The transmission conversion uses an RB clutch kit, which I ended up upgrading to a competition clutch stage 4 kit, which features a 6-puck spring plate and a ceramic disc that offers up to a 250% increase in torque capacity over a factory clutch. It's paired to a competition clutch forged ultra-lightweight steel flywheel. The only downside with this setup is that it's super aggressive. The engagement point is like an on-off switch and there's not much room for error. It's not super easy to drive slow, such as parking lot maneuvers, but when I'm out for a proper drive, it's super rewarding. The shifts are short and crisp. The rear end I had fully rebuilt using OEM parts, but I also had it upgraded. I imported an OEM Nissan Silvia S15 helical limited slip differential. It's a stout gear type unit that doesn't use clutches. I ended up having my original ring and pinion transferred to the helical unit, which offered a standard 4.08 final drive. It's pretty aggressive, especially off the line. It could stand to have taller gearing for highway use, but overall I'm pretty happy with it. With the rear end upgrades, I ordered upgraded axles from Driveshaft Shop. They're rated to withstand over 600 horsepower thanks to a ball and cage design CV versus the factory tripod style CV. They also feature high-grade aircraft quality torsional center bars and a Porsche style 108mm CV with billet adapter plates and hardware. Nissan gave buyers a fair amount of flexibility when it came to outfitting the interior of the 240SX, but even fully loaded by late 80s standards, it's still refreshingly simple compared to anything on the road today. And honestly, that's part of what makes it so enjoyable. There's a kind of freedom in driving a car where nothing is intervening between you and the road, and that simplicity actually makes it more relaxing in some ways, while also making it genuinely fun. What may surprise a lot of people though is how well put together these cars actually were. No, you would never confuse a 240SX with a luxury car, but for its price point back in 1989, Nissan delivered a lot of quality value. Depending on the exterior color, Nissan offered the interior in 3 colors: black, brown, or blue. Door and panel trim were made from fewer components to reduce the chance of squeaks and rattles. The doors and dash are padded rather than bare plastic, and the same cloth material used on the seats carries onto the door panels and even the glove box lid. It gives the cabin a cohesive, uniform look that feels more thought out than you might expect from a budget-friendly sports car. And the fact that even after 36 years, so much of this interior has held up remarkably well, which really speaks to the build quality. This particular 240SX left the factory with just about every option you could spec on the fastback that year. Power windows and locks, power mirrors, cruise control, and even a rear wiper with a washer system were all added. Air conditioning was available, while the pop-up sunroof added another $450. Nissan also thought of the small details. One of my favorite little touches are the independent adjustable air vents mounted on either side of the steering column. They seem minor, but they let you fine-tune airflow exactly where you want it, and that kind of ergonomics is something you just don't see often today. Storage space is surprisingly good. You have wide door pockets, a large locking glove box, and a center console cubby beneath the armrest. Another cubby is beneath the radio, and there's an ashtray in the center console that I use as a handy iPod holder. Unfortunately, no cup holders. Because this car was ordered with the Sport package, it also came with Nissan's seamless style monoform bucket seats, which managed to strike a balance between comfort and support with a nicer look overall and fixed headrests. Adjustments are simple, sliding and reclining for the driver and front passenger. The steering wheel can be tilted manually. A leather-wrapped steering wheel and shift knob were part of the Sport package. When I started restoring the interior, my goal was always RESTOMOD. I wanted to keep as much original Nissan character as possible, but also bring in a handful of subtle upgrades that would enhance the driving experience without taking away from the car's identity. To get there, the interior was completely torn down and reassembled as part of a near-complete restoration. The entire floor, much of the car's interior structure and side panels was all treated with Second Skin Automotive Insulation's Damplifier Pro sound and vibration deadening mats. On top of that, key sections of the floor got their thick Luxury Liner Pro mats and Overkill Pro sound filtering layers behind various panels. Collectively, it all did an incredible job of making the car quieter and cooler while also giving it that more solid modern feel. You can actually have a normal conversation inside this thing despite how loud it is, without having to shout over annoying exhaust drone. The audio system was another area I upgraded. The stock 4x6 speakers were swapped out for kicker 6.5-inch speakers, all powered by a Pioneer 400-watt 4-channel amplifier. I also added a kicker 10-inch base station subwoofer. It's not super powerful, but it provides a nice low-end punch to the rest of the stereo without taking up a large amount of trunk space. At the heart of the stereo is a Pioneer DEH P6500 head unit, which is period correct for the early 2000s and features a flip-down detachable faceplate. It was a high-end single-DIN radio for its day, complete with a CD player, tons of settings, and those wild animated screensavers that Pioneer was known for, including the iconic Dolphin theme, along with another that shows 2 cars racing through a canyon. A little piece of nostalgia that just makes me smile every time it lights up. To modernize it slightly, I added an auxiliary connector so that I can use my old iPod and the option to install a Bluetooth module if I wanted to stream off my phone. Being that I deleted the original antenna, I was able to find a discrete one online that secures flush to the top edge of the windshield so the AM/FM functions still work as they should. I also tracked down a new old stock Nissan under radio storage pocket and integrated a custom USB charging port in the center console versus the original cigarette lighter to keep things convenient without looking out of place. For peace of mind, I also fitted a NextBase 622GW dash cam with their rear window camera and hardwire kit. It keeps the install tidy while providing full video coverage front and rear. Best of all, the dashboard is still the original crack-free factory piece, a miracle in itself for any S13, but especially rare given that this one's blue. That's probably one of my favorite details because it makes the whole car feel that much more fresh. Any non-functioning switches for things I deleted, like the cruise control buttons on the dash and steering wheel, were replaced with OEM Nissan delete panels or custom 3D printed parts to give everything a factory-ish look. I also retrofitted an OEM map light unit with LEDs, upgraded all of the dome, footwell, and trunk lighting to LED, and even sourced a brand new OEM dome light housing. Altogether, the interior now feels exactly how I envisioned it, mostly original in spirit, but with enough thoughtful updates to make it more refined, more comfortable, and more fun to actually use. It still has that simple, driver-focused vibe that makes the 240SX so special, but now it's quieter, sturdier, and a little bit cooler than Nissan ever intended, and to me, that's the perfect balance. To be honest, reinstalling air conditioning was not part of my original plan when I first did the RB swap. It wasn't until the past year or so that I finally felt confident enough to tackle it, drawing on some experience I got with some AC work I've done on other projects. Essentially, I used all of the original 240SX wiring and underdash components as my foundation. I disassembled everything, removed the evap core, thoroughly cleaned and purged all the components, replaced the expansion valve, and sealed it all back up as if it were new. A while back, I was fortunate enough to source a new old stock R33 Skyline AC compressor that matched this motor, which became phase 2 of the project. I paired it with a compressor relocation bracket from Platinum Racing Products, which pushed the compressor forward to create more clearance between it, my dump tube, and the front cylinder head oil drain. This also let me run a shared belt configuration with the crank and power steering pump, effectively adding an extra tensioner to reduce the chance of slippage, a common issue with factory setups on high RPM, high horsepower RBs. Using a set of RB compressor hardlines and a variety of universal fittings and adapters, I fabricated my own AC hoses running from the compressor to the firewall, from the firewall to a universal dryer and binary pressure switch, then to a universal AC condenser and back to the compressor. The dryer sits roughly in the same position as the original, and the condenser is mounted behind the intercooler. I added 2 8-inch electric fans behind the condenser to maximize cooling efficiency. The fans are also wired to assist radiator cooling even if the AC isn't on based on temperature. In other words, the car is now cooled by 4 fans, 2 12-inch and 2 8-inch. To make servicing easier, I had my high and low side service ports welded directly to the compressor hard lines so everything is conveniently in one spot. Overall, I'm really happy with how the system turned out. It cools just like the factory setup. Once I press the AC request switch, as long as pressures are within spec, the rest of the electrics and safety features are seamlessly managed by my Haltech ECU. The 240SX is technically a 4-seater, but the rear seat is definitely on the small side with limited headroom and legroom. Getting in back is a little easier on the passenger side thanks to the front seat having a convenient tilt and slide feature. You just pull the release lever on the seat back and it moves forward automatically. The driver's seat doesn't have that feature, but you can still tilt and slide it forward manually, it just takes a little more effort. Once you're back there, the space feels basic, but the seat itself is actually pretty comfortable, assuming you can fit. The bottom cushion is slightly dished, which helps hold you in place while also making the most of the limited headroom. There aren't many amenities back here. You get an ashtray built into the rear of the center console and, of course, seat belts. Speaking of seat belts, the early S13 rear belts are interesting. They were a 3-point design, but the straps were manual. You had to position them yourself. Nissan didn't introduce retractable rear belts until midway through the generation. The shoulder and lap belts click together with a clasp, and then you bring the assembled belt over and click it into the receiver just like the front seat lap belt. When not in use, the belts can stay assembled and hang neatly on hooks built into the side panels. The side panels themselves aren't padded like the front doors, but they do have large molded armrests, and at the top edges of the B-pillar trim there are small coat hooks, handy for jackets or small items. While the back seat isn't exactly spacious enough for most adults, it's more usable than you might expect, especially for kids. And one of the best features is that it folds down easily to expand the trunk, which adds a surprising amount of practicality. The trunk of the 240SX Fastback is a surprisingly practical space, especially when you consider that the Fastback and Coupe share pretty much identical exterior dimensions. Both are 178 inches long, 66.5 inches wide, and 50.8 inches tall. The Fastback's hatch design makes a huge difference in usability. It provides about 14.2 cubic feet of cargo space, nearly double the 8.6 cubic feet found in the Coupe. And the large rear opening with low lip makes it far easier to load bulky items. The rear seat folds down via convenient pull handles on either side, instantly expanding the cargo space for longer or wider items, while the flat floor and minimal wheel well intrusion makes the space more usable than the Coupe's more confined trunk. The Coupe, however, also has a folding rear seat to boost practicality some. Like the rest of the interior, Nissan didn't skimp here. The floor, rear seat back, side panels, and even the hatch itself are fully carpeted with matching liners, giving the trunk a cohesive, finished look. Originally, the trunk mat would have included slots and anchor points for a sunroof carry-in bag, but for the restoration, I left it out to maintain the clean aesthetic. Plus, I couldn't find a replacement carpet with the correct cutouts and binded edges, so there's that. Like I said, I relocated my battery back here and secured it with a special bracket. The bracket is underneath the carpet, so the mounting hardware is nearly invisible. My power and ground wires run through the original trunk light hole, so I built a sub-harness and relocated the trunk light on the left side, keeping it functional without disrupting the layout. Access panels across the rear make accessing the taillights and side markers simple, without requiring complete disassembly. The Fastback came with a removable cargo cover for privacy and sun protection. Removing it and folding the rear seats down gives you maximum cargo space. The subwoofer I added fits perfectly below the rear seat cushion in between the shock towers. Because of the rear seat's rake, I was able to mount the amplifier for the other speakers to the back of the sub box. I decided to remove the spare tire because it was too small to use with my upgraded brakes, so I replaced the deteriorated cardboard spare tire cover with one made from aluminum. A clean solution while attaching exactly like the original cover did. Of course, before wrapping up, I should probably address the question I get more than any other. How much did it actually cost to build this car? Truthfully, I don't have an exact number for you. This project has stretched across nearly a decade through 2 house moves, plenty of life changes, and more lost receipts than I care to admit. What I can say is that it's been a lot, but thanks to the help of some incredible sponsors along the way, it hasn't been nearly as overwhelming as it could have been. But to put things into perspective, I did create a painstakingly detailed build sheet last year, updated to 2024 pricing, and ever since I've been updating it with whatever else was needed in order to complete the car. It's also worth mentioning that, no surprise to anyone I'm sure, prices have gone up significantly for all of this stuff. Therefore, it would cost a lot more to build this car than it would have when I originally started sourcing parts. Many parts on this car aren't even available anymore. My build sheet with a mix of 2024 and 2025 prices puts the raw cost of parts and machining alone at around $92,000. That's likely closer to $100,000 once you account for missing odds and ends, and I know there was a ton of them. That figure includes major expenses like paint work, the engine build, and dyno tuning, but it still doesn't reflect the countless hours, years of my own labor, late nights, and small untracked purchases that come with a project of this scale. The reality is, between discontinued OEM parts, the rarity of some of the upgrades, and the custom work involved, the 240SX is irreplaceable. Numbers can tell part of the story, but what really makes it valuable is everything that went into bringing it back to life piece by piece, year after year. Well everyone, that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, those of you who have stuck with me and the channel all these years wanting to see 240 content. I know there was a lot of gaps in content and I apologize for that, but we're here. Finally made it. This is a feeling that I just can't describe. What a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. This thing drives incredible. It sounds amazing, and I'm just looking forward to enjoying it how it was meant to be driven. Driving it how it was meant to be driven and enjoying it. Anyway, if you haven't subscribed already, be sure to. Make sure those notifications are on. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like down below because it really helps the videos out a lot. Anyway, guys, I'll see you on the next one. Take care.